Natwest shares surge as results beat expectations. Welcome to Market Insight. I'm Ramzan Karmali. Well, even though operating profits fell 16% at the British bank, its results still beat analyst forecasts. That sent shares at 1.8% higher. It also announced that it's bought a £2.4 billion mortgage book from smaller rival Metro Bank and upgraded its performance outlook for the year. So, was the market reaction justified today? Well, to help answer that and more, I'm joined by Janet Moy, Head of Market Analysis at RBC Brewin Dolphin. Janet, thanks so much for joining us. Well, those NatWest results, on the face of it, don't look that impressive, even though they did beat market expectations. So do you think the reaction by the markets was justified?
I think generally markets are just encouraged by the fact that, first of all, it is a beat against estimate. And secondly, it just raises the full year revenue forecast because I think mainly of the fact that interest rates in the UK are likely to remain higher for longer. The Bank of England still hasn't cut interest rate, and even if it does, I think Natwest is expecting just about 2 rate cuts later this year at most. So that actually really helps with the projection of the net interest margin, which is a very important revenue source for the bank, of course. I think markets are also quite delighted by the fact that there's still very much focus on cost control. We know how wage inflation is, rampant in the UK, and they're still trying to manage cost. I think that's very important focus for the CEO. And also, I think you mentioned that they acquired a £2.4 billion mortgage book from Metro Bank. I think analysts just sees that as in line with the bank's strategy of strengthening its retail arm. So I think there are quite a lot of good news and positivity in terms of the outlook for NatWest, and I think that's why analysts were pretty encouraged.
Now, next week is a busy one for central banks. Let's start with the Federal Reserve in the US. What are you hoping to see there?
Well, I think the consensus is that the Fed is not going to change its interest rate at the next meeting. But I think a lot of focus will be on the guidance, obviously, because I think the call for interest rate cuts has been intensifying in the recent week. First of all, given that economic data has generally been slowing down, particularly in the labor market, and obviously the rout that is happening in the equity market that effectively tightens financial conditions. So I think there are more calls for a rate cut, and I think this is a Federal Reserve that has been leaning on a rate cut anyway. So I think analysts are pretty much pricing in a rate cut in September, but not just as soon as the meeting next week.
So possibly no rate cut from the US. What about the Bank of England?
Well, honestly, it is such a close call. I think the markets cannot make its mind up. I think it's just a coin's flip whether they're going to cut. I think the sensible argument, according to the data, would be that they are not going to cut next week simply because one very important metric, which is a services CPI, is 5.7% in June, and relative to the Bank of England's expectation of 5.2%. So that alone would effectively rule out a rate cut. But having said that, I think the Bank of England's governor has been quite leaning on a cut, and there are already 2 people in the committee voting for a cut. They just need to persuade 3 more people, including the governor himself. And also, I think the labor market has slowed meaningfully in the UK, and inflation is generally heading in the right direction. So it is really, really a close call, I'm afraid.
Now, another central bank that's going to tell us what they're going to do with interest rates is the Bank of Japan. But if anything, we're looking for a hike there. Is that likely to happen?
I think it could be likely to happen. I think market is pricing at about 70% chance of 15 basis point rate hike next week. And again, I think it is a difficult call. I think it makes sense for the Bank of Japan to keep normalizing interest rates given how low and out of whack it is with developed economies, and how much it would help to strengthen the yen, right? And I think expectation is that the Bank of Japan will keep tightening policy, and I think that is why the yen actually has moved quite notably, appreciated about 4% versus the dollar in just recent week. But I think at the same time, there are also concerns, which is consumer spending is still pretty weak in Japan. And I think that purchasing manager indices has also contracted in the most recent reading. And inflation, after all, is is okay, but it's not actually posing a threat. So there is also supportive argument for the Bank of Japan to just stay put. So again, I think it could be a close call, but I think it makes sense for them to keep normalizing interest rates.
Janet Moy from RBC Brewin Dolphin, many thanks for your thoughts. And that's Market Insight. Don't forget you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.